Welcome, Buff fans, for a little midweek analysis. And Adam, we're usually doing this after a Wednesday practice after we talk to a coach and a player. So we didn't have that this week. So, but there's stuff to talk about with an injury report and a little bit of news with change of play caller. I do want to start off by real quick, just offer condolences. A young man who was briefly committed to the Buffs. Was it the first year? I think it was year one, right? Marshawn
Correct.
Kneeland, yeah,
Yeah, and he actually signed financial paperwork with Colorado, was set to be a
yeah,
Buff and ended up going back to Western Michigan, got drafted. Yeah.
yeah. Tragically passed away. The report came out this morning. Self-inflicted gunshot wound last night or early this morning as we're doing this, and so just a sad story and condolences to his
Yeah.
family. And wasn't a Buff, but he's in that football family and certainly had a little bit of ties to the Buffs. And just from a human element, just condolences to his family. Just a tragic loss of life.
Yeah, no question. And I remember talking to him. Seemed like a great kid, and so it's really unfortunate. It's uh, you know one of those things where you got to compartmentalize as human beings, but man, when you take a step back and kind of look at just some of the tragedy that we got to deal with on a daily basis, as Coach Prime says, we're all dealing with something.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, and it just goes to show you never know what people are dealing with. And it uh, to transition, this week, has been interesting with the Buffs. And Coach Prime has not made players available, after the game on Saturday and also this week. And he's talked about like shielding his guys, and twice in the post game against Arizona, he talked about mental health and wanting to make sure that these guys are good in that regard. And this incident, puts a light on that it I know a lot of people when they heard that this last week, they're like, okay, whatever, these guys should be able to handle that. But it's a real thing, with mental health. And so um, everybody's going through their struggles, like you said, right?
Well, the thing is, in 2025, I'm sure every older generation kind of feels like we grew up in a better time, but I wouldn't have wanted to grow up with social media being the way it is right now. Like, I was a knucklehead in college, Brian, and but you didn't have phones out everywhere, and I didn't do anything too crazy. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to self-indict myself here, but
Yeah.
just
What did you do, Adam?
but you know what I mean. It
Yeah.
nowadays it is just such a different environment, and
Mhm.
our kids have grown up in it and they're used to it. But it's like, man, like because our human brains have not evolved to the point of dealing with all this technology. So some of the fight, flight, or freeze responses can come from a simple email that just sets
Yeah.
you off, and so it's much different now dealing with all these triggers that you get with social media, and so it's tough, man. And but they are getting paid now, so there's that element of it. There's kind of a discussion in terms of how much these guys need to be held accountable now that they are getting paid. But I guess back to your original point, they're still 18 to 22-year olds for the most part, and so
Yeah.
uh, your brain is still developing at that point, and you've got a lot of stimulation coming at you and a lot of negative stuff coming at you right now if you're the Colorado Buffaloes.
Yeah. And the thing is, they are 18 to 22 or whatever, but you're not going to stop the criticism, right?
No.
Uh, and people that, the fans and, critics, sometimes the media, they don't care how old you are. It's, you failed on third down. You threw an interception. We're going to blast you, And so I think it's going to be an interesting thing to see how coaches, um, they've been dealing with it more so in the social media realm. But now that you add in the element of getting paid to play, um, that could be another element the coaches deal with as far as like the mental health and the psychology, with their athletes. So that'll be an interesting thing to see, how coaches handle that. But this week, how Coach Prime is doing it is like you said, is it's circling the wagons and it's just point at me, and there's a lot of people that coach that would say Coach Prime's always been a look at me type of guy. This is a different reason he's doing that. This is a all right, aim at me. I'll take all the criticism. This is a guy that can take it, right? And so we'll see how that approach works.
Yeah, my bone to pick would be more with the lack of communication in terms of the play caller duties because it's going to leak somehow. You've got
Yeah,
way too many people in your organization, in your program, that are maybe not even doing it out of spite or anything negative. They just, people have conversations with other people.
yeah,
And so the fact that it was not reported before Brett Bartolone reportedly called plays against Arizona kind of shows you that they actually do have a pretty insular nature in terms of keeping things in house. But
yeah,
to expect that to continue on, like it's Coach Prime's prerogative to not put out announcements if that's what he wants to do. But you lose control out of being able to put that information out when you do that because
yeah.
it is going to come out. You're not going to be able to keep a lid on it. I don't know if he thought that was going to happen through the end of the season, but that's unrealistic.
Yeah, and I think to me, and everybody would have their own way of doing it, but to me, um, the way to do it would just be, yeah, and I know he doesn't want to criticize. He's never really fired guys, right? It's more of like demoted, and yeah, he doesn't want to criticize, but like it's just quietly make the announcement, say, yeah, we've got to change things up. Brett's going to call plays this week, and what that does, that eliminates the digging. It eliminates people from having to go try to find it, and it also takes some pressure off of anybody in your building that, hey, keep this a secret, and so I think that's the way I would go about it. But Coach Prime does it differently. But it's out there now, and we know that Brett Bartolone, apparently called plays on Saturday. It didn't look a whole lot different. The offense still struggled, and the bigger problem is the execution, right? I mean, this team is just not executing and playing very well.
Yeah. And we talked on Tuesday after Coach Prime's presser about this situation, kind of not as definitive at that point, but I said it's almost a moot point because you're not
Yeah,
changing the offense at this point.
right.
And so this is not going to be Brett Bartolone's offense. Um, I would say there were some things as Pat Shermer got a little bit more comfortable during that 4 game stretch in 23 calling plays where you could see him put just a fingerprint here and there. So maybe we'll see that from Bartolone these next 3 weeks. And I think wrinkles at this point would be good because it's been a pretty predictable offense. I feel like defensive
Yeah,
coordinators have had a pretty easy time game planning against the Buffalo's offense this year. And so if you can throw some of that stuff in there, that's great. I think Brett Bartolone comes off as a really smart young coach. But again, this is going to be his offense, so it's kind of hard to fully evaluate him, especially based off that Arizona game, which
right.
was a game where he's just getting his feet wet in that role back again.
Yeah, if we saw anything different, I mean, Zach Atkins, the tight end, was way more involved than we've ever seen. Usually Atkins will catch a pass. We're like, well, there's the tight end catch for the day. He caught five
Yeah.
passes the other night, so and played a lot, and so maybe that's a wrinkle. It'll also be interesting to see how. Um, Obviously, the bigger key is Julian Lewis and how does he play, right? And even 2 years ago, when Shador was hurt, Ryan Staub goes in there, and Pat Shermer, he was able to tailor the offense to Ryan Staub to the point where they almost won a game out in Utah, and probably should have because Travis Hunter had 2 touchdowns taken away. But we'll see how Bartolone slash Shermer's still there. See how they tailor this thing, for Julian and. Deion Sanders said it the other day. He goes, "Look, now we got to find out what makes Julian comfortable, what he can do." And so that'll be a work in progress too, as they kind of tinker with that. And I would imagine it would look better next week than it does this week, and maybe it looks better 2 weeks from now because Julian gets a little more comfortable. So we'll see. But this week could be a little interesting as they're getting used to Julian in that starting role.
And it could get interesting. You've got 60% of the starting offensive line on the participation report
Right.
right now, and two of them, Jordan Seaton, Larry Johnson III, are listed as doubtful. So, not what you'd
Yeah.
want for a new
Questionable.
play caller trying to questionable.
Just questionable. So that's not as bad
Questionable.
as
Okay.
doubtful.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, keep the hope alive there, Brian. Yeah, no, thanks for the correction there. But yeah, that's not ideal when you're going to start a freshman quarterback on the road for the first time, and you've got a new play caller for the second week now. So Amari McNeil is out.
Yep.
Tawfiq Bayard's out for the first half. Those are probably their two best defensive players, right? Right
Yeah,
there.
probably. Although Jeremiah Brown's been playing really well lately, but yeah, those two guys have been two of the most consistent, and the other ones out have been out. I mean, Hakeem Williams, Makari, Vickers, and Christian Hudson. But yeah, I will say for hope on the offensive line, I went and looked last week, and I don't remember the numbers. I don't have it in front of me, but um, most of the guys that CU has listed as questionable in the initial report have actually played that week, and so we'll see what happens this week. I think the only one that didn't was Nikhil Webb Walker was listed as questionable. He didn't make the trip a couple weeks ago to Utah. So most of the time those guys have played, but when you watch Well Off Media earlier this week, Jordan Seaton and Larry Johnson were not practicing. So we'll see. And I also didn't see um, Xavier Hill practicing the other day, but he's listed as probable come out that concussion. So it sounds like they'll get him back. But yeah, it's interesting, man. I mean, the trenches have just been beat up on this team, right?
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. It might get Simeon Price back at running back. That
Yeah,
would be fun. He was averaging 5.8 yards per carry early this season before he got hurt. You get a steady dose of him and Dallin Hayden. I feel like going on the road and you really commit to that, it can really help Julian Lewis out quite a bit. So, yeah, if they can get those offensive linemen out there on Saturday and get Simeon Price back at running back, there is some optimism there, I guess.
yeah. Although I will say, I'm sort of chuckling when you say, a dose of Simeon Price because they don't do that with running backs. It's probably it'd be nice to have like a heavy dose of like a Dallin Hayden and Simeon Price, but what we're probably going to see is if he plays, he gets 2 carries, and Dallin gets 7, and Micah gets 8, and Cam Michael gets 4, and so that's probably what we'll get. But
I'm just trying to will this into existence,
I
Brian.
know
That's
you
all I'm
are.
trying to do.
I know you are just being the realist here, but
Yeah.
to your point, Simeon was running the ball pretty well earlier this season,
Yeah.
and so I don't know if it matters as much because of the guys they've been cycling through anyway, but um, maybe he gives a spark to that running game, and but those are the main ones. R.J. Johnson, I felt like he's going to be back the last couple of weeks. He's been warming up the last couple of weeks, but he hasn't really gotten out on the field yet. So I think R.J. Johnson listed as questionable. It could be back. DJ McKinney listed as questionable as well, and that's a new one.
Yeah, he has obviously not played up to his preseason all conference hype early on this season, but still their most talented cornerback. And West Virginia's got a talented receiver that's been targeted over 50 times this season. So
Yeah.
you definitely like to have him out there. I do want to give a shout out to Ivan Yates because the first time I saw him run out there, I think I turned to you, Brian, and I was like, oh, things are bad at cornerback when Ivan Yates is out there. And I didn't mean that like as a personal shot at him, just that this is somebody that was not part of the discussion. And the limited times we've seen them practice and since he's been here, he hasn't really been a guy that stood out. And so, but he's battling out there.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys. You're like the effort is coming from him, and he's definitely undersized. But I expected kind of Tyreek Davis to be that guy, but he has not been that in terms of the cornerback position this year. So my alarm's going off. I got to check in on my flight out to Pittsburgh tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, shout out to him. He's been doing a solid job, but yeah, it would be rough if you don't have DJ McKinney this week, and certainly rough if you don't have Jordan Seaton. I mean, they haven't played a game without Jordan Seaton since 2023. So and he was in high school then. So um, it's gonna be interesting this week. But yeah, I think that'll. Anything else on this episode? A couple recruiting bits, right? The Buffs a win and a loss on the recruiting trail earlier this week.
Yeah, it was pretty close together on Tuesday morning.
Hmm.
Start with the bad news. Emmanuel Ruffin, a top 20 defensive line recruit in the 2026 class. He's from Alabama, decommits from Colorado. He had taken a visit to Missouri after he had verbally committed to the Buff. So there's a lot of speculation that he's going to end up there. He took other official visits to Alabama, LSU, Ohio State. Just maybe he jumped into the decision process a little bit too quickly. And then
Yeah.
just moments before that, they actually got their first 2027 pledge. Alexander Ward from IMG, his older brother, Christian Ward, is a 26 recruit, a receiver recruit at IMG that had already committed to the Buffs. Alexander's listed as an athlete, pretty highly regarded 4-star recruit on 24/7 Sports, and he's probably going to play cornerback, but he's got that position versatility. He could grow into a safety probably down the road as
Yeah.
well. So good news, bad news there, and there's a lot of guys on this commit list that are still getting recruited by other programs. Rodney Colton Jr., a linebacker that they really want to keep on board, has been getting recruited by other schools. Gavin Mueller, who we've talked about, the tight end out of Illinois, still has a lot of schools coming after him. Most of these other guys seem pretty solid at this point, though. They've got 12 commitments on board right now. So it's going to be there's a lot of reasons for the season to still matter, and recruiting is definitely one of those.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, when you're struggling, like the Buffs are right now, flip season gets more interesting, right? So you start losing some of those guys in flip season. If you're winning, you start flipping them the other way. Like last
Yeah,
year, you get a Julian Lewis and things like that. So it's going to be interesting to see as we get into the kind of, I guess, the home stretch of the 2026 recruiting period. So and we'll be all over that, obviously, and so. Adam, we'll catch up with you later this week for a game preview.
sounds good.